When most of us feel lonely, it seems like the obvious answer to say, well, go make friends, and yet, wouldn't we all if we could? It is not as easy as that, even if it is as easy as that. What does that actually mean? And most of us get overwhelmed very quickly by the difference between where we're at. And for some of us, that loneliness can have been a long time. It can be coming from really painful experiences where we're scared to open up ourselves and trust and hope again. We've got all these circumstances, all these fears, all these past experiences kind of coming with us. And we start with where we're at right now. And there's a hunger and there's a loneliness, and with that comes a feeling of insufficiency sometimes and of insecurity. And so we kind of like recognize that that's where so many of us are at different times in our lives. And so when we actually think about having, we talk about having a tribe or having that group or belonging or having a bunch of friends, and that can just sometimes feel like such an extreme gap. I call it the intimacy gap, the distance between where we're at and where we want to be. And it's not as easy as just go solve that, go change the gap, right? And so I wanted to make it just a short video, and this obviously won't do it justice or cover everything. I've written a lot of books and done a lot of videos on that if you want to go deeper. But I did just kind of want to share in a nutshell one strategy that I thought might be helpful when you kind of are looking to close that gap. One of the most important things neuroscience is showing us is that when we see, it's called dissonance, the distance between those two things, and there's a lot of dissonance there, and our brains are wanting to close that gap in order to like not have the dissonance. We want to like feel like when we say we want something, we go and solve it. And so often what happens in this case is we only have two choices when there's a gap like that of loneliness and connection. Our only two choices before we feel peace of some form or another is to either, change our place, our circumstance, to rise up to meet this connection. And if we've tried that a few times, hit our head on the wall, we feel overwhelmed, we don't feel good enough, all of that case, then the other option that we sometimes tend to do is to like lower the dream, right? So sit there and convince ourselves, I don't really need people. I don't think everybody needs friends, and and I think they need, and we kind of like devalue the goal because we're trying to close that gap. We want to just kind of have these two be at the same place. We want to convince ourselves that we're okay where we're at or that we can get to where we're going. And when we see that dissonance, we typically go to overwhelm. And neuroscience says the most important thing we can do when it comes to closing that gap after naming what we want is taking one fast, short step to closing that gap. Hear this. We can't sit here and wait until we know the whole process, and we can't get caught up like the whole elephant. We have to eat it one bite at a time. And the most powerful thing we can do for our brains to say, I care about that, I want it, I value it, and I'm going to do something about it. And so I want to walk you through a really quick, easy process to help you start taking little baby steps. I've uploaded a worksheet for you that can kind of help walk you out. I'm going to do an example of one with you, but print off that worksheet in the description of this video. You can also find it on shastanelson.com/10 steps. And we're going to walk through what it looks like to start taking a baby step toward our goal. So name your goal. I did a video earlier on 3 types of loneliness. So if your loneliness is from lack of interaction or from lack of intimacy or from lack of kind of identity, like specific friends that you want to have, then your strategy is going to look different. So you need to kind of name what your goal is. Is it to go meet more people? Is it to go deeper with a few people? Is it to find a specific group or type of people? So you need to kind of name that. But I'm going to do an example of one that just says, my goal is to make a new friend. All right, well, that sounds easy enough, except it doesn't, right? So I would write that down as my goal, to go meet one new friend. And then I would say, okay, before I do that, what do I need to do? Well, before I meet a friend, I need to go hang out where people are, right? So that would be the step I would do before that. But what do I need to do before that step? And I'd work myself backwards. I'd say, okay, well, I need to research events and different networks that might be able to connect me with others, for example. And then I would say, okay, before I do that, what do I need to do? Well, before I do that, I need to actually decide what interests or commonalities do I want to use as my introduction to people. And let me just do a little, hold a pin in that. I'm coming right back to it, but I just want to kind of jump over here for a second and just remind you that we actually don't need to have specific commonalities with people in order to bond with them. We don't need to both like the same sport we have no more likelihood of bonding with them by both liking the same thing than not, research shows. But where the commonalities can be helpful to us is it helps us find some people who we can at least start doing something we enjoy with, or have something that's kind of a beginning place for us to kind of pull the thread and get to know each other. So when I say decide what interests or commonalities that I would like to pursue as my introduction, or as my kind of the gateway, or the way where I can find some people, okay, so I need to do that. What do I need to do before I decide that? Okay, I need to make a list of my interests. Okay, or the things I want to do, or the things I'm curious about, or the activities I've wanted to do, or that I am doing. And so kind of start making that. All right, before I make the list, what do I need to do? I need to open a new document on my phone, or I need to find a pen and paper. Like, I need to decide where I'm actually going to make this list. Okay, what am I going to do before that? And you can see we just get all the way down where I need to schedule or carve out some time, put it on my calendar where I'm going to make this list. Am I going to do it right now, or am I going to do it tomorrow afternoon at 2:30? And as soon as we put that first step in play and we say, okay, tomorrow at 2:30, I'm making this list, and we block it off and we do it, and then we've already started closing the dissonance. And in some ways, once we fill this out, we have kind of created a little roadmap that we can follow. And anytime we get stuck, anytime we find ourselves not doing the next step, it's often because that next step is too big. They don't always sound that big, but they might be like we need to start all over again, not at that step. So let's pretend we got stuck on research events and networks and to connect with others. We got all the way up to that one, and we said, okay, here I am, I'm ready to research, and we feel overwhelmed. What could we do to research? And maybe we make a list of all the different things we could do. And so maybe it's reach out to somebody in the area and ask them what they've done. Post something on Facebook asking for ideas for networks that people have joined locally. Google XYZ. Make sure, look and explore the sailing clubs, or see if there's any other meetups that do gaming, or, and so you start kind of making a list, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to explore this one. And you kind of start working backwards, or working around the ideas. The goal is to break every step down into the smallest, easiest step possible. You want to be able to see the movement, and we need to keep telling our brains this matters to us and we're doing something about it. The more our brains hear us say, we know this from neuroscience, that if it keeps hearing us say, I want to make friends, I want to make friends, I want to make friends, and we don't ever do anything about it, we lose trust with ourselves. Our brains, when it hears us say that, goes, oh yeah, she says that all the time and she doesn't mean it. We don't do anything about it. And our brain isn't working with us. But as soon as our brain starts seeing us saying, oh wow, whoa, she's researching something. Oh wait, whoa. Then our brain is like, oh, okay, we're doing this. And our brain will start having different eyes that will help us make sure that we're noticing different things, that we're paying attention in a different way, that we're hearing resources. This principle happens when you're looking for a new car. You start noticing things that if you weren't looking for a new car, you wouldn't notice. And this happens. And so the most important thing that I want you to do is to name that goal. Admit that you want connection. Say you're going to do something about it, and then break that baby down into the littlest tiny baby step you can possibly think of, and then just start moving. I know that it's easy to name this in a couple of minutes, and it's harder to do it, but I invite you to say, I care about this, and I'm going to start moving toward it. I know it's not going to happen overnight, but that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. Blessings on you as you start making the little steps to pull yourself from loneliness into connection. There are people out there who are looking for you. There's people who want to be connected to you. There's people who really want to be your friend, but they don't know you yet, but they want to find you. So don't give up. Just start leaning in and taking one baby little step.